officers, any members of the public that may be observing either live or on the recording. I'd like to welcome you all to this evening's meeting of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee, the Maidstone Borough Council. We are conducting the meeting remotely this evening. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel, and this will include the instant messaging. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings?
I reserve the right to. Malcolm.
And I'd simply ask so that other people are aware, not to prevent you. So one indication that that may be the case. Can I ask our facilitator to take note of the message in the on the side there? We do have a sub available, I believe is registered as a sub, that could take Councillor Parfitt's place.
Okay, so we did have discussions. When
no, I'm actually here.
Ah, there we go.
Ah, excellent. You're there. Brilliant.
I'll mute myself now.
Right. Okay, that's taken care of. I'll quickly explain how we intend to proceed this evening. My role as chairman will continue. However, the responsibility for managing the meeting has temporarily been assigned to the Democratic and Electoral Services Manager, which is Mr. O'Connell. This officer will not steer the debate. They will merely assist in implementing the remote meeting protocols. In addition, Democratic Services Officer Ms. Parfitt is also with us to produce the minutes and to provide procedural advice as required. And again, I'll remind members that instant messaging will be visible to all those viewing the meeting. And I would like to ask you to use that as your primary method to indicate if you would like to speak, and then I can monitor the speaking order. We'll start with just checking who is attending, and I'll ask the facilitator to take the attendance register by reading out the list of committee members, and I would ask them to confirm their attendance by answering present.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Burton.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor English.
Present.
Councillor Garton.
Present.
Councillor Grigg.
Present.
Councillor Mackay.
Present.
Councillor Munford.
Present.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Present.
Councillor de Wigan Shepherd.
Present.
And that's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I would ask you to do a similar thing to read a list of the officers present, please, and indicate which items they are presenting.
Sure, thank you. So we have, at this meeting, we have William Cornell, Director of Regeneration and Place, Mark
Present.
Green, who will be presenting on item 14, Director of Business Improvement, Philip Coyne, the Local Plan Review Director, presenting on item 16. We have Rob Jarman, Head of Planning Development, Russell Fitzpatrick, the Legal Advisor, Mark Edgerton, the Strategic Planning Manager, will be presenting on item 16, Helen Smith, Principal Planning Officer, will be presenting on item 17, Annan Ironmonger, Planning Policy Officer, who will be presenting on item 18, and Orla Sweeney, Equalities and Corporate Policy Officer. And we also have Ellie Dunnett, who will be presenting on item 14.
That's right, that's covered that. Agenda item 1 is apologies. I believe that we are full house, so there are no apologies. Similarly,
That is correct.
Item 2, which would be where we would indicate substitute members, because there are no apologies, there are no substitutes this evening.
That is correct.
Item 3 is the matter of urgent items, and there I'm pleased to report there are no urgent items to consider this evening. Item 4, although we may have observers, I do not think there are any recorded visiting members this evening. Is that also correct, Mr. O'Connell?
That is correct.
Item 5, are there any disclosures by members and officers, please? I will take the silence to indicate no disclosures. Please speak if there are any. No disclosures noted. Item 6, I'd ask members to disclose lobbying, please. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? And the facilitator will ask members in alphabetical order if they have any disclosures. They must answer either none or yes and specify the agenda item or items, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Burton?
None, although I will actually declare the item on the Marden Neighbourhood Plan, which is in my ward, and I have obviously had indirect lobbying.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
No.
Councillor English?
Sort of, and it's related to item 13, which I want to make a brief comment. It relates to a possible community rail partnership.
Okay, so you wish to make a comment on that item at the time, you mean?
I have been lobbied on that, so I have to declare that.
Okay. Councillor Garton?
No, except possibly the Marden neighbourhood plan. I believe most of us have in the past been indirectly at least lobbied on that one, but nothing recently, nothing since the last committee meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Grigg?
No.
Councillor Mackay?
Other than 16, which really Lenham relates to, but other than that, no.
Councillor Munford?
No.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid?
No.
Councillor de Wigan Shepherd?
No.
Thank you. That's all the lobbying, Chairman.
Thank you. We're now at agenda item 7. There are no part 2 papers, and I intend to take all items in public. Please speak if you disagree with that. I will consider that to be agreed by all. Item 8, this concerns the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March 2020. Circulated with the papers. I trust you've all had an opportunity to peruse them. I move that the minutes of the meeting be agreed as a correct copy. Does anybody have corrections they want to raise? Please speak if you do.
Yes, this one.
Councillor English?
I did in fact raise a point on the committee work programme. It doesn't mention that fact, that I did in fact raise a point on the continuing non-appearance of the 20-mile-an-hour scheme report, which I think is even more pressing given the recent events.
Okay, would you be content that we update on that item when we look at the work programme, or do you require a formal
I don't require an update now. I simply wish it to be noted in a minute that I raised the point and it doesn't record it.
Are any members opposed to that amendment? We will note that in an amended copy, Councillor English,
Thank
and
you.
I will sign that accordingly. Any other corrections? That being the case, I will sign them with that amendment. Agenda item 9, petitions. Are there any petitions, please?
There are no petitions, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item 10. I've not been advised of any questions from members of the public this evening. Similarly,
there are none.
Thank you. Similarly, item 11, I've received no questions from members, which takes us to agenda item 12, which is the work programme. You should all have sight of that on page 10 in the papers. The one thing I will mention, since Councillor English raised it, I have actually pursued the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit pilot issue through the JTB agenda setting, and I'm advised that the pilot stalled at the onset of the current circumstances because it couldn't progress to a public consultation. And I'm also advised that their current thinking is perhaps to enlarge it with the opportunity provided with the government's current assistance on special highways measures to encourage active travel and safe pedestrian and cycling. So just to assure you, Councillor English, that is on the radar, but we may look forward to some further information at the next Joint Transportation Board. Any other comments, or shall we be content to note the work programme? No comments, therefore we'll consider that noted. Item 13, reports of outside bodies. There are none to consider this evening.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I did say I wanted to make a very brief report on this. It is quite significant, actually.
Okay, I will give you some margin here because the protocol is to submit a written report for the agenda pack.
Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, but this happened after the agenda was already sent out, literally on Friday. South Eastern Railways, as a result of the extension of their period of operation, have made up to £400,000 available for the establishment of possibly 2 community rail partnerships. You'll be aware we already have the Medway Valley one, and it appears that there's a very significant chance that the Borough Green to Ashford line that runs through Maidstone East, and obviously through Barming and on through Lenham and so on, could be a potential future partnership. So I just think you need to be aware of this possibility, because that has been of significant use to the Medway Valley line in terms of encouraging passenger transport usage, and it could be quite useful to us as a council if that went forward. I will ensure that if this does progress as a proposal, that members are informed if you wish to be informed, because it does seem that there is a potential here for Maidstone.
Okay, very good. So we'll receive the formally submitted report in due course, and from what you're saying, I think we should await the formal proposition.
Oh yes, of course. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't saying
the update.
Oh, no.
The update is appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're on to the substance of the meeting this evening, the committee reports, and I'll just quickly run through how we're handling things. In each case, I will read the agenda item and then refer to the officer who will be presenting the report, except where any members of the public or representatives of any organisations have registered to speak. After the report has been introduced, I will then advise members of the list I have received by instant messenger of those members wishing to speak, and then ask if there are any other members who wish to speak. These might be members who have dialed in, and I'd need you to speak that case. By way of a shorthand, members are reminded that the use of the green telephone symbol will be sufficient to demonstrate that you wish to speak in the instant messenger. During the debate, I will invite officers to respond as required. After the list of members wishing to speak has been exhausted, I will ask if any members wish to come back with more questions or comments. If a member wishes to propose a new motion or amend the current one, I will ask for a seconder, with members going through instant messaging or indicating verbally, and the first one to signal will be the seconder. The seconder will be asked if they wish to speak or reserve their right. At the end of the debate, any amendments that have been voted on I will sum up and the original or substantive motion will be put to the vote. I will also ask if all the recommendations can be taken together or whether the committee wishes to take them separately. I will ask the facilitator to go through the list of members in alphabetical order and ask them for their vote, which should be made as for, against, or abstain. In the normal manner, I will have a second or casting vote, regardless of whether I've used my first vote. The Democratic Services Officer will be asked to confirm the vote, and I will announce the decision. If a report is for information only and the recommendation has been moved and seconded, I will ask that it is agreed, and if there is no dissent, a named vote will not be taken. That's just for noting items. At the end of each item, I will ask for a brief pause while those who wish to leave the meeting may do so. So we can start with agenda item 14, the fourth quarter budget and performance monitoring. And I believe that actually Miss Dunne and Miss Sweeney will be introducing this.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. So this report provides the provisional outturn information for the 2019-20 financial year. So looking at the performance against the budget first, with the details shown in Appendix 1, the headlines are: there was a net income shortfall against the revenue budget of 318,000. Mostly that relates to planning services and specifically the shortfall in development control income. That reflects the forecast that we've been sharing with the committee over the last financial year. And a lot of work has been undertaken to try and address some of the income shortfall so that the 2021 budget now reflects a reduced income target. There were also variances within the parking service budget, but these largely net each other off to a smaller overall shortfall of 24,000. And all of the larger variances are detailed within Table 2 of Appendix 1 to the report. The next section of the report details the spending against the local plan review budget. I have to apologise, but there's a correction I need to make to the figures on page 25 of your agenda packs. So where we report to you that there was spending of 237,673 and remaining budget of 280,000 to carry forward, the actual spend for the year was slightly lower than this at 209,770, leaving 308,300 to carry forward into this financial year and be added to the new budget allocation. So total budget available for 2021 will be 508,300 for the local plan review. Moving on to the capital side, not so much has been happening over the past year, but the remaining budgets are there for those two projects and they'll be carried forward into the new financial year. Just a couple of things to note on the finance figures, or for the committee to bear in mind when you're looking at this information. First of all, the figures are yet to be audited, so they should be treated as provisional at this stage. So there's a small possibility they might change. And secondly, the report is presenting information up to the 31st of March 2020. Therefore, the figures you're looking at won't really reflect the extent of any impacts we're seeing from COVID-19 related issues. That's of course something which is being monitored closely, and the impacts will be reported back via the first quarter budget monitoring report for 2021. I'll hand over to Orla now, who can talk you through the performance monitoring information section. Thank you.
Good evening, members. All three of the targeted key performance indicators achieved the Q4 target. Comparable data for the same period last year is available for one of the KPIs, number of affordable homes delivered, and an improvement in performance can be seen. Compared to last quarter, performance has improved for two of the KPIs, two have sustained performance, and for two, performance has declined. But overall, the picture is very positive. There are two errors reported at Q4, where previously reported data was incorrect due to an issue with planning systems and Sage Housing. This is clearly set out in the report and relates to planning enforcement and number of affordable homes, and it's explained fully in the report, and the impact of this has been negligible. All KPIs met the Q4 and annual targets. Moving on to the annual outturns, if I could ask the facilitator to share the additional document.
I'm sorry, do we have an additional document?
Yes, it's just to help explain what I'm going to report to you in the annual outturns.
Right.
Can everyone see that? I will talk you through it, so don't worry if you can't see
Democratic
it.
Services Officer, can you confirm whether we should actually formally admit this as an urgent update? Mr. O'Connell, are you able to confirm?
Oh.
It would appear that we only have Ms. Sweeney and myself showing online.
Chairman, I think you've just lost Ryan. I think most people are okay. I think Ryan, you might just have to wait for him to reconnect by the looks of it. No problem.
Chair, if I can give an update, I've just liaised with Ryan. His system crashed. He's logging in now.
Okay, so my procedural point is that we would normally agree to take an urgent update.
You're correct,
This is
Mr.
additional information being presented. I need either the agreement of the committee or we do not receive this. Can you give us an indication of the nature of this update?
Yes, Chairman. Actually, if I could just talk through the rest of my update, it will be evident then what it means, and then you can decide, perhaps. So 3 of the 4 targeted indicators, we're talking about the annual outturns now, met their annual target, and the 4th was within 10%. So again, very good. There is some data missing that could not be collected due to COVID-19 restrictions, but this has been made clear in the table and a full explanation provided. And now this is the part that the document would help explain, but I'll talk you through it. Unfortunately, just before the meeting, I was informed that there was an error in the data for the indicators, number of appeals in period, and MBC success rate at the planning appeals. So that's in the table. For the first 2 quarters, this should be 48 appeals rather than 44 and 54.17 success rate. And for the last 2 quarters, this should be 45 appeals rather than 44 and an 80% success rate. The annual outturn remains within 10% of the annual target, but is now 67.9%. What I'd like to do is reassure the committee that as with the 2 previous reporting errors, the policy and information team will be working with the planning team to look at their reporting systems and the data collection processes in place to ensure these problems are quickly resolved. So that's what that document referred to. That was a last-minute update that needed to be shared with the committee, obviously because of the integrity of the data. And obviously when Ryan comes back online, I'll let you decide what you would like to do.
Well, I'll address that to members. I am minded to accept this as an urgent update and therefore it will be published as part of the minutes. Do any members wish to disagree with that?
No, it's the right thing to do.
Then please present that document and we will make it part of the minutes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Apologies, Chairman. My system crashed.
Good to have you back.
Can't do it again.
Just to clarify, do you need me to share the document now? Or?
Yes, please. Yes, and we've accepted it as an urgent item. We've agreed that, and it will be part of the minutes.
Can everybody see that?
It's loading. It's just arrived on my screen. I don't know if anybody else is having any difficulty in reading that. It's just about readable. It's quite small.
Hopefully, I talked you through it, so this can just be added to the minutes, so it's 100% transparent what was said.
Okay. Appeals. So in conclusion, what you're saying is, although the figures are revised, they are still positive trends.
Yes, Chairman.
Okay.
And obviously obviously errors aren't nice. The picture has been very good for performance, and it's a shame for that to detract. And the assurance I gave at the end was that the policy and information team would be working with this team to resolve these errors in their reporting. So that will be done swiftly. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that this committee has noted that there have been errors on this occasion, and we will clearly scrutinise that closely in the future. Thank you for that. Is there any further matter to report, or does that conclude your presentation?
That concludes mine, Ellie.
No, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So at this stage, I have one indication, and that is Councillor Garton. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, unfortunately, I was not able to receive that urgent update. Obviously, we was had that explained to us, so that's helpful. But maybe we could present those things in advance, at least an hour beforehand, by email, that we all have it. Also, people who participate on these meetings by telephone. My app just simply it said it didn't support that type of document.
Okay.
Councillor Garton, I just say that the update was so urgent, it came in just before the meeting. It wouldn't have been able to be circulated by email. But of course, I would always take those steps in future. Thank you.
Yeah. I basically wanted to ask some questions on that because I couldn't actually see about these performance indicators in my bundle, and that's why I wanted to raise that. Anyway, as far as the money is concerned, rather than the KPIs, I have very, very serious concerns about it. I mean, we raised prior to COVID the possibility of the appearance of an ever-enlarging black hole, especially with the local plan review. It is something where I think we need to have a longer-sighted view, a longer strategic budget for more than just this financial year to look into the future. And with regards to the COVID situation, I think parking, we had certain parking spaces and regulations suspended, so obviously there will be another black hole cropping up on us rather shortly. So we need to have an update rather sooner than later about the situation regarding parking as a result of COVID at one of the next committees. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I think it would be reasonable to put that onto the work programme as an agenda item request for an update on parking. So we will do that, add that to the next agenda setting meeting.
Is it just on parking, or would that be a general COVID-19 type impact?
I think Councillor Garton was particularly concerned about parking because it is a high level income stream in this committee's portfolio. Perhaps it will come as a broader report than that.
Absolutely, yeah. Or we can do a specific update on parking, or we can tie that into the wider monitoring, of which that will be a component part.
Either way, so long as we get some visibility on that, I think that would be appreciated.
No problem.
No further indications. Councillor Wiggenden, are you wanting to come in?
I did, Mr. Chairman. Have you?
Councillor English, yeah, I've not. Oh, yeah, sorry. No, I'm not seeing you in the messaging, but please proceed.
Oh, that's funny because I have sent it, but there you go.
Just arrived.
I'll send it again. Oh well. Yeah, I think I would like to see the overall budget situation, Mr. Chairman, because this obvious situation has impacted on development control as well. So it's likely that our black hole there is going to get even bigger.
Certainly, I think, if there is a wider ranging report available, we would be pleased to receive it. But if there could be an earlier indication on the parking, if the rest of the information is delaying that, and I would refer members, we all received notification of officer decisions relating to the suspension of certain aspects of parking as emergency measures. And I think it's right that this committee does monitor, in particular, the effect of such things.
Agreed.
So, yeah, noted. A broad update on the COVID impact to our finances at the earliest opportunity, but most certainly a spotlight on parking income.
Noted. Thank you.
No other indications. I think Councillor Garton did sort of touch on this, but for my own part, I would like to say sort of two things. One is, the deep concern that we have around the overspend or reduced income, whichever way you want to look at it, that is before us. And I think we have been monitoring this and prophesying it for some time. I think it's good to tell the committee that the chair, that myself and the vice chair have been pursuing with some vigour a deeper understanding of some of the financial figures that are being presented to us, particularly around the local plan budget. I can certainly say for my own part, I'm not yet completely content with the forecast that is in front of us, but I think we're getting there, and I'm sure that will be shared in more detail with the committee once we've bottomed it out. And the other point that I'd like to really underline is, the more I look at these finances, the more convinced I am becoming that we should properly have a 5-year budgeting cycle for some of these things. It starts with thinking about the local plan making, and we know that local plan making is beholden to us to review on a 5-year rolling basis, and we know from experience that years 1 and 2 perhaps have lower costs than years 3, 4 and 5 when you go to examination, and we have a very linear annualized budget of a couple of £100,000, but I do think that needs to be looked at on a wider horizon, and I'm suggesting 5 years. And when we see the reduced income for planning applications, I think there's a logic to understand that with the local plan making process, we might be allocating sites which you could be a reasonably safe bet will come as planning applications, and that creates the income to process them, and then once they are, all the allocations are dealt with, then that will tail off. So there must be a parallel line with some latency behind the local plan process that if we were looking at these things on a 5-year basis, we would probably be more certain in our predictions and our expectations. So I just want to sow that thought with the members so that when we come back to budget making later in the year, it might be something that you're minded to support and ask for. Sorry for such a long statement. There are no other indications to speak. This is a report for noting. I will ask if it's noted. Nobody's objecting. It's noted. Thank you, officers, for your help with that one. I think we're now at agenda item 15, which kind of conveniently follows from the last one, where we're asked to review the key performance indicators that we wish to monitor and scrutinise in the forthcoming year. And again, Ms. Sweeney, would you be able to assist us with this, please?
Yes, Chairman. Very briefly, the report is the key performance indicators for 2020-21. The appendix to the report sets out the new draft KPIs for you to consider. What I wanted to say was that it had been brought to my attention that this committee would like to be provided with a number of open enforcement cases on a quarterly basis going forward. I understand that to date this has been given as a verbal update, and I wanted to take this opportunity to suggest that for consistency, this information could be recorded as an information-only KPI and included in your 2020-21 KPIs. Thank you. Chairman, you look confused.
No, I'm just checking to see if there are any indications for speaking. There aren't, so I'll leap in. Okay. You've absolutely taken the words that I was going to propose to members, that we ask for a KPI that monitors the number of outstanding cases, so that we can see whether there is backlog developing or not. I think what we've got to be careful of here is defining outstanding case. My definition of a closed case is one when the breach is remedied, or there is no further action possible. The KPI that we have at the moment is when we make the first response to an enforcement action, and thereafter they may be open for years or may be closed off very quickly. So in bringing that KPI forwards, I would want to know what the clear definition of open case is, and that might not be something we can easily get into now, but my definition would be until remedy is reached. So that goes beyond serving enforcement notice. It actually means enforcing enforcement, and it would be an open case until that is concluded. I don't know what other members think about that.
I have indicated, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Just for the sake of consistency, I just note that quarterly, I think it's a quarterly basis, Planning Committee received quite a full report. Now, you wouldn't want a full report, but I would have thought that the definition of open cases should be the same across both committees, otherwise the council's going to get terminally confused. So before we rush off and make another definition, can we at least check what the definition there is?
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know what you use at Planning Committee, because we should be consistent. Yeah. Councillor Mackay, you've indicated.
Just in time, I've just finished my biscuit. TBC, is that to be confirmed?
Usually, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
No other speakers indicating. Let me see. Just referring to the papers to see what we're actually asked to do here. So the recommendation is that the draft key performance indicators for 2021 attached as Appendix 1 be agreed, and I would add, with the addition of, I'm just checking that in Appendix 1 we haven't already got it, but with the addition of reporting of open enforcement cases.
Okay, I've noted that, Chairman.
Do I have a seconder for that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I second.
Thank you, Councillor English. I think we need to take that to a vote now, Mr. O'Connell.
Certainly. So I'm going to go through the list in alphabetical order, and if people can answer for, against or abstain. So Councillor Burton.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor English.
For.
Councillor Garton.
For.
Councillor Grigg. Councillor Grigg. Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Abstain.
Councillor Munford.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reed.
For.
And Councillor de Wigan Shepherd.
For.
Thank you, Chairman.
So the summary of the voting, please.
So that will be 8 for and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Therefore, that motion is carried. That concludes that agenda item. Thank you, everyone. Moving to agenda item 16. This is the local plan review update. And I believe that this is going to be jointly presented by Mr. Egerton and Mr. Coyne.
That's correct, Chair.
That's correct. Thank you very much. And it's Mark Edgerton here, and I'll be starting off. At the 10th of March meeting of this committee, members resolved that officers provide a short written update at each meeting of this committee concerning any slippage and or progress on delivering the local plan review on the timescale agreed. This report provides the requested update and seeks agreement to an elected member engagement protocol in advance of a recommendation to undertake a public consultation on the local plan review that is scheduled to commence in October 2020. So this introduction will be provided into 2 parts, split between myself and Philip Coyne. Taking the update on progress first, Maidstone Borough Council in its role as local planning authority is still on course to undertake a public consultation on its preferred approaches to addressing the key areas of growth in the borough in October 2020. This includes housing, employment and retail growth, as well as other matters that influence the amount and location of growth in the borough. A reminder also that there is further scheduled public consultation that will address remaining growth-related issues as well as preferred approaches on more detailed policy areas in February 2021. In preparation for the October 2020 public consultation, officers have been focusing on work areas set out in paragraph 1.5 of this report. This includes ongoing production of topic papers that will help explain how preferred approaches to growth have been developed, as well as other reasonable approaches. It also includes analysis of sites that may contribute to the future growth, first stage transport modelling to identify the potential impacts of growth on the highway network, and an iterative sustainability appraisal by specialist consultants. A Level 1 and Level 2 strategic flood risk assessment has also commenced. I will now hand over to Philip Coyne to provide remaining introductory information for councillors on this item.
Thank you, Mark. Chair, we thought it would be a good opportunity also, because obviously a key element of the member engagement programme will be around the garden communities work, which has received some attention. So going back to the call for sites, members will know that we received 9 proposals around garden communities. These were quickly sort of grouped down to 7 by putting together some sites that were proposed along the Leeds-Langley corridor. So those 7 sites were a site known as Lidsing, which is north of the M2 at the boundary with Medway, Binbury Park, which people will know, a group of sites north of Staplehurst, the Heathlands, the MVC proposal at Heathlands, site north of Marden, a site called Pagehurst Farm, and the group of sites I referred to a moment ago around the Leeds-Langley corridor. So we commissioned independent consultants, a company called Stantec, who some may know as Peter Brett Associates, who've recently been taken over in the first instance to undertake a suitability assessment of the sites, looking at the site's ability to provide the numbers that would be necessary to sort of tick the garden communities box, the ability to access strategic transportation infrastructure and other infrastructure, ability to provide the range of uses that the garden communities aspire to, aligned to the sort of key garden community principles as sort of developed by the Town and Country Planning Association, and to be acceptable in policy terms. So as a result of that, the consultants advised that 4 sites should progress to stage 2 assessment. Those sites being the Leeds Langley corridor, Lidsing, Heathlands and north of Marden. Similarly, the stage 2 assessment is being conducted independently, again by Stantec, who won the commission in competitive tender. This will be more detailed, looking at issues around viability in terms of the cost of development and cost of building, cost of infrastructure, etc. Deliverability, looking at issues such as land ownership and ability to assemble sites. The ability of a proposal to fund infrastructure, the views of infrastructure providers. Sustainability in terms of transport links and design. The forward management of proposed garden communities, what the sort of continuity plan is, so to speak, and it's that range of factors that what one would expect to actually ensure that anything we recommend further down the line to members can actually be made to happen. Currently, that stage 2 assessment is taking place in relation to the site at Lidsing, to Heathlands and north of Marden. On the Leeds Langley one, officers are in discussion with the site promoters around the timing and whether or not this group of sites or some of them are likely to be able to come forward within the plan period. All of this work will come together at the end of June, early July, with the sustainability assessment, the transport work, strategic flood risk assessment, and then that essentially will lead into the engagement programme that is the subject of the report before committee tonight. In closing, I would ask members to sort of keep an eye on a few sort of really important facts. Is that at the moment, all of the sites that were originally part of the assessment will still remain in place. So they are still live within the local plan review process, and they will remain as such until we know that we've got sufficient sites to reach our housing target and to put together a sort of coherent and a sustainable spatial strategy to recommend to members. And then even at that point, that will have to be agreed by members. It will have to go through very detailed public consultation, and of course it will have to undergo examination in front of an inspector appointed by the government. Finally, I would just add another note of caution, is that even if a site comes through as a site that is viable and deliverable, as part of the phase 2 work, doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that will appear in our plan or in what we recommend to members, because there is a bigger overarching piece of work around how these things fit into a sustainable spatial strategy in alignment with all the other sites that were put forward in the call for sites. My apologies for the length of that, Chair, but I was trying to make it as complete as I could.
Thank you. I've got no indication, so I'll ask for a bit of clarity on one or two things you said there. So what we're saying is that, or what you said is that all sites that were submitted are still in play.
Yeah.
And that when we move forward to options, and I'm taking the words from page 44 of the report, there might be preferred approaches and reasonable alternatives, so that this committee will be tasked with picking an appropriate strategy, and there may be several versions of the strategy for us to choose from.
Yeah, and that will be the work, Chair, that the engagement programme will do with members between now and when we come to committee in October.
So members may choose to put something in that isn't necessarily at stage 2, or equally they may choose to take something out that is at a stage 2, for example, in the case of the larger settlements.
Indeed.
Yeah, so it's absolutely member decisions at that stage, as required by the national planning framework, that we choose an appropriate policy strategy, not necessarily a purely technocratically refined one. Councillor Mackay, I think you've indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Philip, you indicated that the Leeds Langley corridor garden community is being delayed. My understanding is that's quite a number of different sites. If that doesn't come forward as a garden community, do I assume that individually the sites may well come forward for consideration in the local plan?
But there are a number of options there, Councillor Mackay, in that we're working with the promoters are in agreement with us around the fact that we need to do some more work around the timing and delivery of infrastructure and all of that. And it could be that we say there are I think there are some in the existing plan around sort of areas of potential growth. So it could be that Leeds Langley comes forward as an area that's got potential for growth, and that we say, and during this plan period, here are the number of units that we think this area may deliver. So we are working closely with, and will be working closely with, the site promoters to do that assessment.
But not necessarily as a garden village community.
Not necessarily as a garden community. The site sort of passed at phase 1 on the basis that it is suitable for a garden community. Now, the thing that we were testing out sort of in more detail at phase 2 is that deliverability and the timing of that deliverability, and with that group of sites, it's that timing issue that we're working on.
It's possibly worth saying that there are key infrastructure providers that also need to come to the table in that, perhaps it's a new piece of road infrastructure, for example, that, would need to be on the agenda somewhere, but needs to participate in that refinement as well. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely true.
Councillor English, I think you're next. Councillor English?
Sorry, it muted again when. I'm sorry about that. Some of it's been said, but I must stress how important your initial remark was, that we need to be able, as members, to choose from options or even change the options slightly, should we so choose, because otherwise we won't have met the test within the NPPF for preparing a properly considered local plan.
Yeah, an appropriate one. Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. Councillor de Wigenden.
Thanks very much. In saying that, and I know that there are sites which are not included in these 4 which have been taken forward. I know that some members are keen on them, but in the event that members do decide they actually want to do that, I mean, this has to be evidence-based, doesn't it? Not simply the case that members would like a particular site, despite the fact that it's been assessed and to be assessed that it's not suitable or not suitable like these 4. Isn't that right, Mr. Coyne?
Yeah, our job as officers here, Councillor, is to advise members that yes, these sites are technically deliverable and that they are feasible.
Does that
also, Chairman, if I could just follow up that point, I think Councillor de Wiggendine does make a very important point, of course, and that is that the ultimate adjudicator will be an inspector, an inspector appointed by the Secretary of State. So yes, what we will need to produce here is a consultation that demonstrates a preferred approach, which, as you say, is an appropriate approach, not the most appropriate approach, and that we will need to demonstrate in that consultation reasonable alternatives to the preferred approach as well. That process is subject to public consultation. Beforehand, we'll be undertaking the member engagement to help formulate the desired preferred approach, with officers advising members in that regard. But ultimately, we will also need to ensure that the local plan review, including the spatial approach, is a sound one and one which can pass the examination by an inspector appointed by the Secretary of State. Thank you.
And if I can just add to that, Chair, that we are, in terms of Mark's reference there to sort of reasonable alternative solutions to meet our housing targets and our development need, we are working very, very hard on that at the moment, particularly with the company that we're using to do our sustainability assessment, because if members may have seen, there are a number of in the southeast area alone, there are a number of local plans that have failed at examination stage because they haven't been able to demonstrate that to inspectors. Equally, we need to be able to demonstrate to an inspector that actually the grouping of sites or the composition of sites and the strategy that we put forward for examination is actually a deliverable one. And that's where we come back to that sort of feasibility and the technical assessment that officers are doing.
Thank you. No other indications at the moment. We don't want to lose sight of the engagement programme that we're also being asked to consider here. Anybody want to bring that in? Set out on page 45. I think that being the case, there's certainly no dissent around it. We could probably conclude this agenda item. It's a two-part recommendation. Firstly, that we note the report, and secondly, that we agree the proposals for the engagement. I think for simplicity, we'll take it as a single vote. So from the chair, I move, as per the papers, that it be noted and that we agree the proposals. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, David.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Grigg. That's great. And if I could ask our facilitator to take us through the vote now.
Thank you, Chairman. So, as before, members. Councillor Burton.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor English.
4.
Councillor Garton.
4.
Councillor Grigg.
4.
Councillor Mackay.
4.
Councillor Munford.
4.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid. Councillor Parfitt-Reid. I'll move on down the list, but then come back. Councillor de Wiggenden-Shepherd.
4.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid, are you there?
She has given an
Yes, she's
message.
indicated.
She's put it on chat.
Yep, right. Thank you. That concludes the voting, Chairman.
Can I ask for the voting result, please?
Yes, so that was 9-4.
Thank you. That's unanimous, therefore carried. Thank you for that. That concludes that agenda item. We're on to agenda item 17 next. This is the Maidstone Statement of Community Involvement COVID-19 Temporary Addendum, and I believe this is being presented by Mrs. Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. As you'll have read, this report focuses on the proposed temporary changes to our adopted Statement of Community Involvement, or SCI, and these are in light of the current COVID-19 pandemic. The proposed temporary addendum of changes is available at Appendix 1 of the report. The SCI is a really crucial document setting out how and when communities and other stakeholders engage with the planning system, and that's both in terms of plan making and decision taking. Failure to follow through with our commitments as set out in the SCI may leave us vulnerable to legal challenges. There are, however, talking about unmute in the chat. Sorry. There are, however, elements of the SCI that are simply not possible to adhere to under the current conditions. Most notably, this includes provision of physical consultation materials in public places, such as libraries, for inspection, and the use of public spaces to hold hearings. Now, government guidance on gatherings, social distancing, and the fact that our primary deposit locations for consultation material are currently closed all mean it's necessary to propose temporary changes to the SCI to accommodate these extraordinary circumstances. To summarise, the main SCI changes are that the option to view consultation material at physical inspection points will be temporarily unavailable and that all documents can be viewed online. In addition, hearings or examinations are expected to be conducted primarily through written representations or through the use of video conferencing technologies. I think it's important to stress that these proposed temporary measures are crucial to ensure that plan making is able to continue throughout this time, to make sure that we keep moving forward with strategic planning and the local plan review, particularly at the key public consultation stages where engagement with the community is really vital. It's why this report recommendation is for the approval of this temporary addendum to the SCI, and also to request that any further changes that are deemed necessary to keep pace with future government guidance on COVID-19 can be approved by the Head of Planning and Development under his delegated powers. Thank you. Any questions?
Councillor Garton, I think you've indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think with this COVID situation as we've got at the moment, long term, the greatest casualty will be civil liberties and the democratic process. So we've got to be very, very careful what we agree and how we scrutinize any sort of amendments to our life as we used to know it. Now, when I look at the local plan review public engagement, I see that no more documents can be inspected in any other way but online. Now, I represent a large ward where online is simply not possible, where we have speeds akin to what most members still remember to be dial-up, which is a daily reality in my ward. So that documents are not available in any other way to be inspected, I find highly regrettable and not suitable. And paragraph 1.7 says the TPG also advises that authority need to consider alternative and creative ways to engage those sections of the community without access, or shall we put adequate access to the internet, and take reasonable steps. Now, we've got this lovely big glass front at the Link in King Street, where we normally have little posters for election notifications. Why can we not use that window for a start to simply pin a hard copy there that people can look at it in a shop window, so to say? That would be a creative way to deal with that shortcoming, but I am very, very worried about documents being no longer available but by the internet.
I must admit you've put a side to that I hadn't previously considered, Councillor Garton. Does anyone else wish to? Councillor Mackay.
Slightly different from Patrick's. I I can't see. I can see the logic of bringing this in, so I don't entirely share Patrick's concern because I don't see any alternative. But the length, I wouldn't like this to be an indefinite. Is there a period when this must come back to this committee to be extended, to be agreed further? I would hate it to be an indefinite, and I think we should try and remove it as quickly as possible, when practical possible.
Mrs. Smith, can you help with that question?
Yes, I can try to. The idea is not to keep it in any longer than necessary. This is, I've tried to stress, is a temporary measure, and as soon as the government update their guidance, or even, for example, start opening libraries, which are our deposit locations for many of the physical documents, then the idea is that we can easily and quickly update the SCI again, and if we can use the delegated powers of the head of planning to do that, then we can do that all the more quickly. But it's very hard to put an exact date on it until the government release new guidance.
I would much prefer to see a date on there, even if it's just bringing it forward in 6 months, a year's time.
Councillor Mackay, can I jump in, because I think we might be slightly on the same page here. I'm particularly uncomfortable with the delegated powers.
We're not having delegated
that are requested, and the very nature of this document, as Mrs. Smith said in her introduction, the importance of it for the public and their safeguards to engagement. I think that all amendments, barring perhaps the most simple typographical ones, should come back to this committee. And perhaps if we captured that, maybe we could say that as a committee we want a review date on this of, say, 3 months, where it comes back to us. So rather to your suggestion about the date, Councillor Mackay, if we resolve that it will come back to us for review in 3 months or 4 months, would that go some way towards your concerns?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Okay, so perhaps we take that thought forwards. I think Mr. Edgerton. No, next I've got Councillor Clark.
I do wonder whether it might be premature making this agreement at this stage, given where we are. I do share the concern that we're limiting the way that we're going to be consulting, and that will be cutting people out. Is this decision something that we could defer?
My understanding, Councillor Clark, is yes, we could agree or not agree it, but the local plan making process is going to carry on anyway. The government haven't given us any leeway in our time scale.
I agree, but I think that things are changing quite quickly, and it could be that between now and our next meeting we may have an option to make our documentation public. So I'm just wondering if it may be a little bit premature making the decision now, whereas we could perhaps hold off and just to see if events overtake us.
The way to cover that would be to amend the addendum to say to simply say or that they will be made public if circumstances change, if guidance changes. So it would be saying that we're accepting the digital format, but it would automatically contain the intention to put them into public places again if the government say that that's possible.
I'm not sure whether the government will make that decision on our behalf, though. I think we, as members, we can decide when we feel it's appropriate to have a workaround.
Would it help, Chair, if I may, that I absolutely understand Councillor Garton's concerns. I think that the difficulty is that most of these documents obviously won't be sort of a single page to put somewhere that people can view easily, and if people can get access, even with speed restrictions, it's something to read. So if it takes a little bit of time, people will have time. Personally, I think it's probably quite important that we sort of be seen to be adopting these new mechanisms to keep everything moving. And if members wanted it to come back in a relatively short time scale, just as a really short report that just says the government guidance is still in place or it's not, and we're going back to the previous system, then we could do that.
Could we perhaps agree this for today, with the caveat that we will review it each meeting going forward?
I could suggest that we put it on our work programme, and the chair and vice chair could review it at agenda setting on each occasion, and if we're informed that there are changes, then we can put it on the agenda.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, my indication of wish to speak a long time ago appears to have been completely missed.
Possibly I have missed you. If I did, I apologise. Let me just review the list of where we're at the moment. You did predate Councillor Clark, so you will be next, Councillor English.
I wanted to formally move that actually we did agree these recommendations now because we have to, because otherwise we're out of line with what we're actually doing, but that we report back to the next meeting of this committee and on a continuing basis, because fundamentally I'm not going to accept any delegated changes to the SCI. The public will not accept that.
I would second that, Councillor English, that we deal with it on that basis. Let me just see if any other speakers want to add anything to this. Councillor Mumford, you haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Quite honestly, we want to reverse this as quickly as we can back to normal. So everyone that's objecting to delegated authority, I suggest we give delegated to reverse it back to what it is now. And that's all the delegated power we're going to give them. So we get it back as soon as we can. It will be a delegated power to reverse back to the situation we are in now.
I like the idea of that, Councillor Mumford.
I'm quite happy to accept that into my motion.
Yeah. Councillor Mrs. Griggs saying similar. Councillor Wigan, do you want to speak?
In fact, Councillor English said pretty much what I was going to say. I mean, we can't defer this because we're not in compliance with our own engagement policy at the moment without changing this. So we do have to do this. I think the proposal that's been made is very good, and I think we should go ahead and support it as suggested.
Mr. Edgerton, I think you're keen to inform us.
Thank you, Chairman. I do want to add just one piece of value in this regard. I want members to be aware that the Statement of Community Involvement also deals with neighbourhood plans. Now, we have at certain times key points, key junctures in the production of a neighbourhood plan, statutory duties. And one of those duties is referred to as Regulation 16. This is a formal public consultation on a draft neighbourhood plan. And we as an authority have a requirement to undertake and be part of that public consultation. Now, we actually have a neighbourhood plan which is waiting to get to that stage, and that is Bourton-Mon Chelsea. So what we would like to do is to start that public consultation. But I think the key point here is it isn't just the local plan review that is being held at this stage. This does also affect neighbourhood plans. And the other point I'd like to make is that these documents are rather large documents, and so in terms of physically seeing them, they are 30, 40, 50 pages documents as well. So, you know, the front cover may be seen from a front window, but actually the content of those documents may also not be readily available. Thank you very much.
Members, I sense that we've got some sort of consensus of the way forward. So I think, Councillor English, if you'll allow me to attempt to summarise where I think your motion's at.
By all means, Mr. Chairman.
It's that we accept the temporary addendum, that the statement of community involvement becomes a standing item on our agenda until further notice or further decision.
Correct.
That the only delegation given is to reverse the addendum to the previous status quo.
Correct.
That's everything we've discussed so far. Councillor Garton's original point about some people just aren't digital makes me think that we should add, shoot me down for this, people could order a paper copy. Now, I don't honestly think many people will, but in the interests of total inclusion,
I think that's worth considering, because we have done that in the past, haven't we?
Yes, whether it's chargeable or other. I mean,
we did
it's almost it's a mite hypocritical for us not to do it, given that we've all had paper copies of even this agenda thrust upon us as a workaround for the COVID scenario, because of the possibility of the digital medium not being up to scratch. So it would be a fourth point that paper copies can be ordered.
It's worth looking into, isn't it? See if we can do that.
Sorry, Chair, may I just make a comment on that particular point? That obviously depends if the post room is open, because someone's physically got to be available to do all of this. And at the moment, the council is engaging in a phased return, so we just need to be careful of a promise which we may not be able to deliver on.
As far as I'm aware, Russell, the post room is in fact open.
Chairman, can I add to that?
Yes.
If I take off my facilitator hat and add on my corporate support hat instead, the post room is open, the print room is open, and corporate support are available. So that is something that we could probably, working with planning, we could facilitate that through the corporate support team who are currently in Maidstone House.
If our wording was that the council will use its best endeavours to provide paper copies if no other means of access is available to an individual. So use our best endeavours rather than a cast iron commitment.
David, could I just come in there, please?
Please do.
It's just, I think we definitely need to include the best endeavours just to safeguard us, because potentially we could be inundated with 100 people asking for 40 copies and not have the administration support to be able to facilitate that. So I think we do need to offer it with caution.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so
I need to cost out what it would cost to actually deliver it.
I think best endeavours would say until the money runs out as well. We'll cover that scenario. Reasonable endeavours, our legal people are suggesting.
He's probably right. Best to be cautious on that one.
Could say just endeavour to provide. So in summary, we accept the addendum. We will place the matter as a standing item on our agenda. The delegation will be to reverse the addendum and no other changes, and that we will endeavour to provide paper copies when essentially required. That's your motion, I think, Councillor English, which I'm seconding.
And I agree with that change. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a good idea, just to show we tried.
If there's no further comments, can we go to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Burton?
4.
Councillor Clark?
4.
Councillor English?
4.
Councillor Garton?
4.
Councillor Grigg?
4.
Councillor Mackay?
4.
Councillor Munford?
4.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid?
4.
Councillor de Wigan and Shepherd?
4.
That concludes the voting, Chairman. Thank you.
Confirmation of the result, please.
Again, that is 9-4.
That's unanimous, therefore carried. Thank you, members and contributors. Last item, I believe, agenda item 18. This is the matter of the neighbourhood plan. Before introducing the item, I have actually been asked to read a statement on behalf of Councillor Andrew Turner, who is the chair of the Marden Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group. He has asked me to say to you that, as chairman of the Marden Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, I'm grateful for all of those who participated in the formation of this plan through members of the community, the steering group and Marden Parish Council. The plan has had the support of the planning inspector and, most importantly, the community as displayed by the referendum result. We hope members will support this very important local planning document. Thank you. And that was from Councillor Andrew Turner, Chair of the Marden Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group. Mrs. Ironmonger, can you help us with the introduction, please?
Thank you, Chair. The Marden Neighbourhood Plan has reached the final stage in the neighbourhood planning process, which is to adopt the neighbourhood plan. To date, we have 3 made neighbourhood plans in the borough, which is Lewes, North Lewes and Staplehurst. To date, the plan has been through 2 rounds of consultation and examination, and then a successful referendum back in February of this year. Following a successful referendum, a neighbourhood plan forms part of the development plan for the borough. And as the council, we are required to make a neighbourhood plan within 6 weeks of a successful referendum. But however, due to the COVID-19 pandemic earlier and is ongoing, SPI and full council were postponed. Therefore, this meeting tonight is the first opportunity that council has to consider the results of the referendum. The committee is asked to consider the referendum result and make a recommendation to full council that the neighbourhood plan is made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I indicated earlier, I am one of the ward members for Marden and Yalding, so I've had some close contact with those involved with producing this plan, and I think we'd all agree they've done an absolutely fantastic job. It is exactly the same steps as we have to go through for the local plan, albeit on perhaps a different scale, but we all know the trials and tribulations involved in a local plan. And I think, their voluntary work is to be commended. So I'm very happy to recommend that we note this, but more importantly, I move that council be recommended to make the Marden neighbourhood plan. And I would seek a second of Councillor Mrs. Grigg.
Yes, I was just about to second that for you, Chairman. It makes perfect sense to agree.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else want to say anything? For the record, you should note the Councillor English has had to leave. But if nobody else wants to say anything, we'll move to the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So, Councillor Burton?
4.
Councillor Clark?
4.
Councillor Garton?
Absolutely 4.
Councillor Grigg?
4.
Councillor Mackay?
4.
Councillor Munford?
4.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid?
4.
Councillor de Wigan and Shepherd?
4.
That concludes the voting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And confirmation of the result, please.
That was 8-4.
Again, unanimous and therefore carried. Thank you, everyone. And I believe that does conclude our business for this evening. So the technology is not perfect, but I think we've managed to conduct matters before us this evening. I'd like to thank you all very much, and I declare the meeting closed.